Okay, so hopefully the purpose of the header file is a bit clearer now. Now what I have set up here is similar to what is on homework 1. So the entire method definitions are inside of this header file. But that's actually not a super standard way of doing header files. There's actually another thing that you do, and I'll explain why. For this, let me actually just jump straight into the lab. So if I go to the class website and I go to Labs, Lab 1 HTML Holidays, here I am. And so let me grab the code. And I'll explain what the lab actually is as I go along, but for now I just want to focus a little bit on the code. So let me go up one directory, so I'll cd ... Now I'm in the CS174 directory. And I'll go ahead and clone the lab. All right, now there's the lab. Let me cd into that directory. And I just want to look at some of the files that are here and to talk about them a little bit. So there's already a header file that I have here. And it actually has a companion C++ file here. So a file that has the same name except it's a .cpp instead of a .h. Now here you'll see something a little bit strange. You'll see that I just have what's known as a forward declaration. And this is all that I need to know if I'm going to use this method and nothing else. See, if I'm going to use this method, so this is a method that returns the weekday of a particular year, month, day, date. So in order to use that, I just need to know the parameters. So I need to know I'm passing along the year first, then the month, then the day. And I need to know that this returns a string. That's all I need to know as a user of this code. Okay? So we call this is an example of something called an API, or an application programming interface. And so what it is, it's just a set of methods with all that you need to know to use them. Okay? So all the methods that you have available to you in this date utils little module, little library here, okay, that we're working on. And so with an API, you can treat the implementation as a black box. Okay, so what we have here is the API is the specification, but the implementation details of how this actually works are left up to the CPP companion file. Okay, so let me now go look over at this dateutils.cpp. So this is where I actually implement an algorithm called the Doomsday, Conway's Doomsday algorithm, to compute the day of the week that it is. Okay, so here's all the gory details. Now you notice there's a couple methods here that are actually hidden. They're not part of the date util, so they're not exposed to who is using them. I'm only sharing this one because this is all you need to know about. These methods in here are helper methods to ultimately compute the day of the week. So these other methods in here are what we call hidden. So these other methods are just helper methods. So we hide them, and the concept is actually called information hiding. It's not for security or anything like that. It's just, look, it's TMI. If all you need to do is get the day of the week, you don't need to know that I'm doing this fancy algorithm here. So let me keep those methods separate. So I'm going to separate out what you actually need to know to use this, and some details of how I make it work under the hood. Okay. So we're not going to concern the user about these methods, okay? Because they don't need to know. All right. So I have this method get weekday. How about I go ahead and try to test it out? So what I'll do is I'm going to create a file, maybe called, I'll just call it test.cpp for now. Okay. So what I'll do here is I'll include IOStream. IOStream is actually C++'s output library. Input-output library, that's what IO means. I've been showing you C's version so far, but we're going to use C++'s here because it's a little bit better for what we're doing. So I'll include, this is C++'s input-output library. but let me also now include date utils.h, okay? And all right, so let me make a main method and returning 0, so the mains are int here, unlike in Java where they're void. This just means everything was A, okay? Let's say I want to know the day of the week that this lab runs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this lab is going to run on January 25th, 2023. All right, so I need to look at my header file here. And so January 5th, 2020, or sorry, 25th, 2023 is when this lab is going to run. And so, okay, so the first parameter is the year, so 2023. The second parameter is the month, which is 1 for January. And then the third parameter is the year. Oops, wait. No, third parameter is the day. Okay, 25. There we go. Now, anyway, you see the way cout works here is it's cout and then always these two left angle brackets, and then whatever you want to output, it can be any type. If you want to keep outputting things, you put another set of left angle brackets, and you can do anything you want. So here I'm outputting the string literal, this /n, so it'll put a line break when I'm done. Okay, so this program is fairly short. It should output Wednesday because that's when our labs usually are. So let's try to compile it. So let's say g++ out test.cpp. Uh-oh. We got what's known as a linker error. Okay, so that LD means linker. Undefined reference to this method. Okay, so interesting. This is not a syntax error. All the syntax I wrote is completely correct. So I followed the specification here. I knew that it returned a string, and I used the right name with all the right cases, and I gave it 3 ints. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is, yes, the syntax is correct, but I haven't actually told G++ where to find the implementation of this, okay? So I need to also let it know about dateutils.cpp because that's actually what has the meat of what makes this work. Okay, so test.cpp, yes, the syntax is correct, but I haven't linked it together with this other file that holds the implementation. Okay. So one easy fix for that is to do the following. I could say, all right, I'm just going to tack on the end of this dateutils.cpp. Okay, so now the G++ knows about both of these files, and it can actually take care of it. All right, so it's able to link together the code that's in here and the code that's in test.cpp. Now, actually, one thing you'll notice about dateutils.cpp is that it doesn't have a main method, so I couldn't actually compile this by itself. Okay, here it's going to be another linker. It's going to say undefined reference to main. If I make this the first parameter here to G++, it's going to think that I want to make this into a program with a main, and it doesn't find a main here, so it's not able to do that. So interesting, we can have a C++ file without a main, but in that case, it's usually the implementation of the specification of a companion.h file. Okay. And so that doesn't really make sense by itself, but it does make sense if I link it to a program that does have a main, which includes that companion h file. Okay. So just to go back up to that worked just fine. And let's see, do we get a Wednesday? Yes, we do. Good. So this Conway's doomsday algorithm worked for us. All right. Now, this works completely fine for us now. But there is one more thing I want to show you about these header files and their implementations that is important when we get to bigger projects that have many, many files. Okay? This is completely fine what I did with G++ tacking on every file that was involved. But sometimes some of the files will take a long time to compile, to turn into machine code. And we don't want to start from scratch every time. Okay? We might actually want to compile dateutils by itself and then link that compiled version to whatever uses it later. Okay? So there's one intermediate thing that we're going to create called an object file. And so just to show you, okay, here I am. Here's all the files I have here. I can basically create like a puzzle piece that is waiting to be plugged into a main, okay, but is still otherwise perfectly functional machine code. I can create such a puzzle piece out of dateutils.cpp by itself. Okay, so no main, it's waiting to be plugged in, but I can go ahead and make what's known as an object file. If I write g++-c, remember g++ by itself doesn't work on this, but if I write -c, and then I write dateutils.cpp, that worked. And so what did it do? Well, you notice there's a new file that showed up here called dateutils.o, and that's what we call the object file. This is the machine code associated to dateutils. Okay, so actually it's passed dateutils through the C++ compiler. I can't run it or anything like that. I mean, if I try, it's not going to work. Actually, it says I have the wrong permissions. Technically, I have to change the permissions first so that it's executable. But it's still not going to work. It says exec format error. Okay, don't worry if it didn't make any sense. I have to indicate to the terminal that this is something I can run. There's a reason that it didn't automatically make it something that I can run, because it's not supposed to be run. We're waiting for it to be plugged into a main, okay? And so what we can do is we can go up then, and instead of, you know, we can have the same sort of command, but instead of dateutils.cpp, we're going to put dateutils.o, and this will actually run a lot faster on bigger programs because it's already compiled dateutils.o. It's just going to plug it in to test.cpp. All right. So that is how it all works. So to zoom out and just tell you again how this all works. In bigger programs, we tend not to put the implementation details inside of a header file. Instead, we just put what you would refer to as an API generally. In C++, we call it a forward declaration. This is just the information that whoever's using this needs to know to use it. Okay, so it's the return type of the method, the name of the method, and then the types of all the parameters. Okay. To go along with it, though, we then do need implementation details that this is actually going to run as a program. So we do need to, you can't just say, okay, I wish that this would work. Okay, I'm just going to do that and I'm done. No, you actually have to then say how it works. Okay, so you need a C++ file that goes along with the .h file where you actually eventually define it. Okay, so here we declare it, and here we're going to define how this works. Now, one cool thing is we can hide some of the gory details. Okay, so I notice I didn't actually include forward declarations of these helper methods. Get century, anchor, get doomsday year is leap year. I didn't include any of those here because I don't want you don't need to know about them. Okay, they only make sense within the context of my implementation of this, and it's really not your concern. So that's nice. I can actually make a cleaner API here by only including what ultimately is the big method that I want to call. All right. So that's the header file and the CPP file. If you go to then include the header file in a program, you need to make sure that if that program has the main, that you link it to the implementation here. All right. And so I showed how you could do this by just tacking all the C++ files together, including dateutils, the one that has the implementation. But that a slightly better way to do this is to first compile dateutils by itself into what's known as an object file, and then to link actually the object file to this. All right, so let's take a breath and let that all sink in, and I'll ask a couple quick questions about that.